Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences.
Truck drivers, what's a creepy story you've got from the middle of nowhere? I was driving through the Canadian Rockies late at night and had just passed through a small town. So I'm driving through the pitch black, and I need to stop to pee and have a smoke. But because it's so dark, I missed the last rest stop for the next while. No problem, the highway is completely deserted. So I pull to the side of the road, have my pee while staring out into the dark, and then light up a cigarette and stand by my car. As I'm standing there, I see the figure of a man just walking out of the tree line. I'm miles from civilization, patchy cell service, and there isn't a soul on the road. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, and maybe it was a deer, but nope, this was a man. So I calmly walk back to the driver's door and get in, locking the doors behind me. I'm keeping my eye on this guy as I nervously smoke and have my car in drive, ready to peel out, but for some reason, I just stayed put. The guy walks right up to my passenger door and knocks on the window. I crack the window, and I ask what's up. He replies to me in a very, very serious tone, "I need you to call the cops." I cautiously ask why, and he tells me he had gone out into the woods to kill himself, but he couldn't go through with it because he had thought of his daughters right before he was about to do it. I call the cops while the guy quietly cries outside. He had a kitchen knife that he was going to use on himself, so I stayed in the car and advised him to leave the knife on the ground before the cops arrived. The cops came and got him, but before they left with him, I gave him a solid heart-to-heart and wished him well. I still think about him. I hope he was able to turn things around. Well, it was creepy at first. I pull into a Purdue plant and drop my empty trailer at a go park where they allow bobtails to sit, right next to a nice little pond. My pickup was in 12 hours, so I did my PTI and lay down in the bunk. At about 3 a.m., I hear something tapping on my passenger side door. I get up and look out the window expecting to see someone, maybe a driver asking for a lumper check, but no one's there. Maybe I'm hearing things. So I go back to lay down. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I hear the tapping again, except this time it's on my driver's side. The same thing as before. I jump up and look out my window, but nothing's there. Double lock my doors just in case and open my side hatches so I can hear what's going on outside. After about 15 minutes, I hear a very light splat 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 going along the driver's side of the truck. I slowly get up, planning to look out my window at the exact moment whoever it is knocks on my door. And then I hear a thud coming from the roof of the cab. I stop, grab my tire thumper off its hook and ready myself for whatever the hell is going on. Then a motherfucking goose falls off the top of the truck and lands on my hood. It stands up, waddles back and forth and looks at me. As we make eye contact, the tapping at my door starts again. I say fuck it and throw open the driver's side door, and there's another damn goose waddling away with all the speed it can manage, honking like a 5-year-old who just found the horn on his new bike. The pond I parked next to had a ton of them just dicking around. Needless to say, it was hard to sleep that night because every couple of minutes, the damn geese would peck at my door or land on the cab and waddle around. Parked off an exit ramp at about 3 a.m. for my 10-hour. The moon was full and high, and I spotted an unmistakably human figure in a nearby cut corn field. A little spooky, but I just wrote it off as an old-timer putting up a scarecrow for the grandkids. Started watching a few YouTube videos before turning in, and out of the corner of my vision, I thought I saw movement. I shut my lights off to get a good look and saw the figure but nothing else. I couldn't be sure, but it looked like maybe it was in a different spot. Maybe a little closer even. I was definitely feeling a bit spooked. The highway was devoid of anyone besides a car passing every 10 minutes or so. I didn't want to, but I had to jump out to pee. I considered a bottle, but I told myself I was being childish. I took a look at the figure, and it was right where I figured it should be. I hop out, walk between my truck and trailer and start leaking. Every fiber of my being wanted to look. I told myself again I was being foolish, but I couldn't help it. I looked out. The field was empty, the figure wasn't there. My stomach dropped, I pinched off and jumped back in. I took off down the highway and didn't give one shit about a violation. Stopped 40 minutes up the road at a well-lit and very full Love's. Haven't stopped on a ramp since. I used to deliver hotshot freight across the Great Plains/Minnesota area. One night around 2 a.m., I was hauling across North Dakota, trying to reach Montana by morning. I was delivering a particularly valuable tractor part that a farm desperately needed for the following day. I began to notice some highway hypnosis sneaking up on me, but it didn't really bother me because I'd been through it hundreds of times before. Anyone who has driven across North Dakota knows that it is incredibly flat. Like, really flat. They also tend to be very straight and long roads. It's somewhat easy to see things on the road that are far away, even at night. I noticed something long on the road, spanning my entire lane, approximately half a mile in front of me. I slowed down a little and prepared to move into the opposite lane, thinking it was some retread off a blown tire. As I got closer, I noticed it was two people laying head to toe across the entire lane. I swerved into the other lane, successfully avoiding them, and came to an almost complete stop. But they didn't move. Not an inch. I was just about to back up and check on them when I remembered a story that an old graybeard colleague of mine told me. He told me that in certain remote areas, people will lie down in the middle of the road and wait for a car or truck to stop and see what's going on. At that point, the road layers, along with whoever else is hiding in the nearby bushes, will beat the shit out of the driver and steal his vehicle, leaving him in the middle of nowhere. I decided not to back up, and when the two people on the road saw me put my truck back in gear and drive away, they both got up and walked toward the shoulder. I called the police and explained what happened, but we were so far away from civilization that I doubt anything came of it. Thanks to that old graybeard, I got to keep my truck, my job, and my teeth. My father was a truck driver in East Africa in the 80s and early 90s. During the years leading up to the Rwandan genocide, my father was passing through Rwanda. He reached a checkpoint and was forcibly removed from his truck at gunpoint. Apparently, he looked like he belonged to the Tutsi tribe, and they put him in a cage with other Tutsi prisoners. He tried communicating that he wasn't Rwandan, but no one spoke the same language as him. Every night they would take about 5 people from the cage and slaughter them in front of him. After the third night, he saw a man that spoke a little bit of Swahili, which my dad spoke, and told him that he's not Rwandan and showed him his ID. Somehow that guy got him out, and he was handed the keys to his truck and was on his way. My dad drove a truck between Edinburgh and London and tells this story often. He was driving down the motorway and looked to his right and saw a woman with a Miss Trunchbull bun, as he describes it, staring at him with a terrified expression from a car next to him. Before he really knows how to react, the car pulls off at the next exit and my dad, although shaken, carries on. About half an hour later, a different car with a different driver pulls alongside my dad, with the same woman in the passenger seat, with the same expression on her face. My dad thinks fuck this and plans to pull into the next services to report, as even if it's nothing/misunderstanding, better to be safe than sorry, right? Anyway, the car disappears before he can get any details, plates etc., and he thinks there is no point calling the police with no details, so he carries on driving. Literally about 4 hours later, almost in London, yet another car pulls alongside him with the same woman, same Miss Trunchbull hair, same terrified expression. Except for this time, she appears to be screaming at my dad through the window, so my dad pulls over into a lay-by and calls the police. Apparently, they have received 3 other calls about the same woman/car in the same area in the last few minutes. It is, unfortunately, anticlimactic as he never heard anything more about it, but he didn't see her again and, although he kept an eye on the news, he didn't see anything about it. Hopefully, it's just a giant coincidence. Who knows? Around 2006-ish, I was driving flatbed, picked up a load of construction material, drywall, roofing, I don't remember, but it was prepackaged in boxes, and I remember having to use strap protectors on the load, in rural Tennessee. Memory is foggy now, but I want to say it was between Memphis and Nashville, but closer to the intersection of the MS/L/TN state lines. Tarp required, so I strapped everything down, tarped the load and left the shipper. About 5 miles down the road, in the middle of nowhere woods on a 2-lane road, I noticed my tarp flapping in the wind. Found a wide shoulder and pulled over to fix it. I realized that I just did a shitty job tarping this load and decided to redo it on the side of the road. Undo all the bungee straps, drag the tarps off, roll them back up, climb up on the load and start unrolling the tarps again, and I see a guy walking down the same side of the road I'm on, coming towards my truck. I don't think anything about it other than to keep an eye on him cause I'm in the middle of nowhere and continue what I'm doing. About the time I have tarps set in place and am climbing down to start hooking the bungee straps back on, this dude is getting close enough that I'm now paying more attention to him than I am to tarping my load. I grab my winch bar and set it on the trailer where I'm working just in case. 8-pound solid metal bar about 4 feet long, tapered to a blunt point on one and hollow on the other, used for tightening straps and chains etc. The guy gets to me, and the first thing I notice is his hair. It's like a mullet, but it's patchy as fuck. Like he tried to cut his own hair and had a seizure in the process and said fuck it, good enough to party. The next thing I noticed were his eyes, which I can only describe as off. Like they were clear. I didn't think he was drunk or high or anything, but it also gave me the distinct impression that the elevator didn't go all the way up. Clothes were dirty and not well maintained, with dirty white tennis shoes, cause I remember he didn't have laces on one shoe and the tongue was noticeably out of place. He stops by me, waits until I acknowledge him and just says, "I've got a long walk." I'm like, "Yeah, man, you do, we're in the middle of nowhere." Making it clear there's no ride to be had here. He nods, starts walking by me, continuing on his way, stops at about the driver's door on my truck and turns around, comes back to me and repeats himself. "I've got a long walk." At this point, I explain that I can't give him a ride, insurance and all that. Apologize for not being able to help him out, and he seems to accept this, turns around and leaves. I wait for him to get a little away from my truck and start working on finishing the tarp job. I still keep an eye on him, and he's moving away from me. As I'm putting on the last of the bungee straps, I look over to check where he's at, and he's turned around, heading back towards me, now about 100 yards in front of my truck and coming back my way. It looks like he's talking on a cell phone, has his hand up to his face, and I can barely make out his mouth moving, his other hand waving like he's having a conversation with someone. I finish with the straps, grab my winch bar, and climb into my truck as he's about 10 yards away now. Soon as I'm in the cab, I lock the doors and set the winch bar on the passenger seat just in case. I look at the guy and realize he's not talking on a phone, he's talking to his fucking hand, and now I'm nervous cause he doesn't look like he's having a nice pleasant chat, it looks more like an angry conversation. Crank the truck up, put it in gear and just pulled out. I didn't look for traffic or anything. As I pass him, he's just looking at me, still holding his hand to his face with this dead-ass look on his face just staring at me. Gave me the creeps. About the time I hit 5th or 6th gear, I look in the mirror, and there's no one there. I was driving through eastern Washington on some state roads. There were no rest stops or cities, but I had done the route enough to know there were these massive dirt areas every 40 miles where you could park safely away from the road. I decided to call it a night and closed my blinds, and laid down to watch something on my phone. After roughly an hour, I hear someone try to open the driver's side door. I haven't heard any vehicles on the road the whole time I'm parked, but I get up to peek out the curtains. As I'm looking out into the blackness of the driver's side window, I hear them try the passenger side door. I peek down from the top of the curtain but can't see anything, so I start the truck and kick on the lights. I'm fairly freaked out at this point, so I'm still not opening the curtains but peeking through gaps. Nothing, nobody is standing near either of my doors or parked within sight line. I take a deep breath and close the sleeper curtains, too, because, for some reason, that's going to make things better, right? After laying back down and convincing myself that something blew against the truck and it only sounded like the doors, it was fairly windy outside, and there was a lot of flat ground, I hear what sounds like someone trying to pry open the vents on the sleeper. The door handles start clicking again, and the truck starts shifting like someone is climbing on it. I hit the little alarm button in the sleeper, hoping to spook them off, but it does nothing but add to the noise of door handles, fingers tapping on windows and chassis, and the hiss of air coming out of the suspension. Then suddenly, it stops. A few moments where I can only hear myself breathing and my heart pounding before I hear another truck approach and then drive by. I spent the next few hours waiting for whatever it was to come back, but it never did. In the morning, I couldn't find any footprints or damage to my truck, but on every window were tiny human-looking handprints, like a toddler had licked their hand and stuck it to my window over and over. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Click the right box for the Radio TTS playlist and let us know what the next video should be about.